There's a lot of talent in this section. The time of day does not exist for me to confidently rank everyone in the fringe part of the draft, but starting at the top we've got Carlos Allison, who I've been super impressed with lately. Then we've got Joe Wieskamp, a sharpshooter out of Iowa. Then to a 3-and-D guy, and John Petty. Really enjoyed watching him these last several years. At 72, we have Florida State's Raquan Gray. He's got impressive size and explosiveness that really pops when watching. OU's Austin Reeves is at 71. UCLA's Chris Smith probably ends up comfortably in the second round had he not missed last season with a torn ACL. The injuries are what keep him a fringe guy, but boy is the talent there. ACC Player of the Year Moses Wright is at 69, and Scotty Lewis remains a guy who's just a bit away from being a surefire draft pick. Boise State's Derek Alston Jr. is at 67, and then LSU's Trenton Wofford is at 66. A pair of international bigs with Ariel Huck-Porty at 65 and Philip Petrusev at 64, who has been putting up numbers. 63 is Ja'Cory McLaughlin out of UCSB. He's got a game that lends itself to the pros, and I'm a big fan of his. Pitt forward Justin Champagnie at 62, and at 61 we have Mario Nakic. I caught up on a lot of his stuff recently, and he's got the goods, and there's a good chance I move him up further by draft time. I know that was quick, but we've got bigger fish to fry. Now for your top 60. Jason Preston's still an electric playmaker and someone who I think still has a ton of room to grow. If I had to bet, it'd be on him returning to Ohio next year, but I'd definitely be trying hard to get him in my organization, whether that be in the second round or in the undrafted market if he stays in the draft. Johnny Juzang's terrific tournament sort of threw things out of whack. Just a bit of context for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with him before March. His first 20 games of this year, he put up 14 on 40% and 35% from 3. He had 2 free throws a game at 93% as well. He was a solid player and a fringe prospect in my eyes. The tournament and a really ridiculous jump shooting display has catapulted him into the second round. I'd say Isaiah Livers ends up comfortably on everybody's board if he doesn't get hurt for Michigan's March Madness run. He's a great 3-and-D prospect at the 3-4 spot who can put it on the floor when need be. Teams can't get enough of players in the mold of Livers, and he's certainly on my target list in the mid-second round. I'm still a believer in DJ Stewart's game. He's more than worthy of a second round pick to me, and a couple of development years spent mostly in the G League could do wonders for him. You guys probably know about his scoring potential, but defensively at his position he was impressive, even on a Duke team that struggled as a whole on that end. Sign me up for DJ Stewart in the latter half of the second. Rokas Jokubaitis has signed a 4-year deal with Barcelona. He's now a draft and stash candidate in this class. We'll see how teams view the lefty combo guard with this new information and who takes a chance in getting his rights. I'm pretty surprised more people aren't huge fans of Mamu's game. He's got a unique skill set, being a 6'11 guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot, act as a decision maker in the post and DHOs, and play out of the pick and roll or pop. He's an older guy, and there are questions about him defensively, but he's more than worth a look in the second round. Providence's David Duke is a major candidate to improve his stock during the pre-draft process. Duke has good size, he's a good athlete, and he's solid across the board in terms of skill set for a combo guard. Teams will see how far along his shot has progressed, and that'll have big implications on his draft spot. Neemias Queta is a long and athletic big out of Utah State. He's definitely one of the better shot blockers in the class, averaging over 3 a game this season, but his improvement as a passer has made him a legit prospect to me. He still lacks a little bit of feel out there, but he looked much improved in his junior season, and I think his team picks him up somewhere in the second round. Charles Bassey is another center that I think has to be at the top of your list at that position or potential role. He does a lot of things well and checks all the necessary boxes as a future rotational, rim running, and protecting big with a bit more upside. I'm pretty confident in him sticking on a team. We've talked about Loyola Santi Aldama before, and after getting a few more looks at him, it's pretty clear that he deserves major second round consideration as one of the more intriguing stretch bigs in the class. He's got legitimate guard skills with a chance to be a steal if he doesn't pick up buzz in the next few months. Quentin Grimes feels like one of those prospects who sneakily goes in the early second round, just given his plug and play potential as a 3-and-D guy. If we're ranking archetypes, Q is certainly up there at the top when we're talking about the 3-and-D guys. For Herb Jones, it's going to be about his outside shot. If he can become a decent NBA shooter, he'll have a role. If not, he might be tough to play even with the tremendous defensive ability and an ability with the ball that is unique for his size. There's a lot of different teams and different players that'll be available in the early to mid-second round, and with Johnson's athleticism, size, and unselfishness, he should be firmly in the mix. And that's the end of Tier 8. And now over to Josh Primo. He's a smooth and crafty scoring guard who, if he returns to Alabama for his sophomore season, could easily be one of the better players in the country. I think part of the reason he's generated so much buzz lately is because it seems like teams are more willing to take chances on talent a year earlier, like a Nick Claxton or a Darius Baisley. One thing's for sure, his stock is rising. I'm not really sold on Marcus Bagley. He's still getting first round buzz, but it's tough for me to get on board with that at this point of covering the draft. He's absolutely talented and has a chance to be an elite movement shooter at 6'8", but the rest of his game and injuries make me more weary of him as a prospect. I love Day'Ron Sharpe's physical tools and fleet feet, along with a great rebounding ability, but given his inability to shoot or handle the ball, I don't know if he's more than a replacement center, even with the upside that is there. There are just some guys in different positions that I like a bit more. Terrence Shannon still hasn't officially signed with an agent, so we'll see what he decides after the combine, but I think he'll be fine either way. I think TJ has the potential to crack a rotation by year 2. We're going to learn a lot from the Ignite experience this year, especially from a guy like Isaiah Todd. Todd displayed high upside as a stretch big and shot maker from the 4 or 5 spot. We've talked about his struggles defensively, and he's definitely not the athlete that he's talked about being, especially when he's put up against the Zay Jackson and Kai Jones. And I think with the skill set that he has shown, there's more than enough room for him in an NBA rotation. The way that national championship game went has already sort of erased how that Gonzaga team was playing all season, and Joel Ayayi served as the perfect connector and do-it-all guard that every team needs. I don't know if this comparison has been made before, but he reminds me a bit of Alex Caruso. The cutting, the movement, defensive ability, he's a rock-solid talent who I think will end up knocking on the door of the first round. Max Abmas has made his way onto my board after some reconsideration. And before that, he obviously took advantage of the Summit League with his supreme scoring skills and did it against Power 5 competition as well. For him, I often think about Marcus Howard. Howard put up digits for years against mostly tougher competition, and in my opinion, he was a bit more skilled than Abmas is. It's tough to get through at that size, but just watch a few of his best moments this year, and you'll probably be sold. While his jumper mechanics may not be the prettiest, the shot goes in at a high rate, and the rest of Kessler Edwards' game is pretty much everything you want from a modern rotational 4-man. He's smart, he can defend multiple positions, and he's a good athlete. My expectations for him aren't on the level of some others, but he's a surefire contributor to me. Greg Brown's physical tools are likely going to keep him in the early second round, maybe even first round consideration. I do think it was a bit of a weird fit, and it made complete sense to play Kai Jones and Jericho Sims over him down the stretch of the season, but there's still a lot there and definite guard and wing skills to still realize and refine. Aaron Henry's development over his 3 years at Michigan State was pretty impressive to watch. He went from being a mostly defense-only type of guy to an impressive jack-of-all-trades whose most glaring weak point is the three-point shot, and even there he made enough improvements that you're more comfortable with him going forward. Now Daishen Nix looks great. He's clearly lost some weight, looks bouncier than usual, and it's a great sign considering it was just a few months ago that we saw him playing with the Ignite. He's one of the better playmakers in this class, and if he continues to work on his body like it seems he has been, along with having an emphasis on developing his shot, he'll find a spot in the league. Ayo Dosunmu has sort of fallen under the radar these last couple months. Though I think he's probably an easier top 30 sell in the last 2 drafts, concerns over his ability to score off the dribble in the league and be a lead guard, though he does have great physical tools and untapped defensive potential, just might make it tough for him to crack the first in a year like this. Vrenz Blyenberg has slowly snuck his way onto the national boards, and it looks like he'll actually land somewhere in the second round. I personally think anywhere higher than the late first round is a bit too high for him, but you can see the potential for a guy who moves like he does at that size and routinely makes passes and plays look easy. I think Julian Champagnie is one of the more underrated scorers in this class. You've got the Jalen Greens, Cam Thomases, Book Knights, etc. But when it comes to big wing scorers, he's absolutely at the top. There's still a big draft range for him, but he's someone who I think can really improve his stock heading into pre-draft. There really is a whole lot of potential here in Tier 7. It's a lot of guys with unique skill sets and differing levels of upside and potential roles. I'm much more confident in this area of the draft this year than I was last year, for what it's worth. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is one of the better complementary players in this draft. He might have made the most improvement defensively in a single year as any prospect I can remember in recent history. He's got a high IQ, he's unselfish, and affects the game in a variety of ways. Bones Hyland is putting on for mid-majors coming out of the A10's VCU. He's easily, and I mean it when I say it, one of the best shooters in this class, and you love the long arms and shot creating potential that he possesses. Now there are legitimate concerns about his body, if he can hold his own defensively and to a lesser extent as a passer, but I'm in on Bones and I think you should be too. I've sort of ran out of things to say about Cam Thomas at this point, other than he can create buckets almost as well as anybody, but the other parts of his game were lacking. Can Cam Thomas in his shot selection play a complementary role? We'll have to wait and see. The 3-and-D wing is a hot commodity and the playoffs are always highlighted. Trey Murphy is a prospect that I love as a late first round option for every team, but especially those contending teams. He can shoot it, he's a good athlete, can put it on the floor a bit and hold his own defensively against multiple positions. Don't be surprised if you continue to see Trey Murphy's name rise up boards by draft time. The upside of BJ Boston is tough to quit. He's already looking bigger as he's working out with Chris Johnson and the rest of that Clutch Sports group for pre-draft. If you've been following me all year, you know that I was super high on BJ coming in, and the scoring talent is going to really show at some point, but more than anything, his inability to impact the game much of anywhere else when his shot wasn't falling is what keeps him as a mid to late first round guy for me in the end. If he participates in all the draft combine festivities, Deuce McBride is one of my picks for the guys who benefit the most out of the process. He's a tough-nosed, physical combo guard who has some tremendous moments on the perimeter this year in the Big 12. He hasn't signed an agent yet, but I don't see much of a reason why he should return to school. Oregon's Chris Duarte will not participate in the draft combine, and there are rumors that he's already received a first-round promise according to the Athletic Sam Vecenie. Duarte is a favorite of mine, and on the short list of players I'm confident in contributing early and often in the league. And trust me, you have to be nice to be nearly a year older than Markelle Fultz and be a first-round pick in 2021. There's a very good argument for a few of these guys to be in the next group, but the line has to be drawn somewhere. But for the sake of this exercise, it kind of does. JT Thor is probably still one of the more unknown top prospects in this class. He recently announced that he will be staying in the draft, and I think he's a great mid-first high upside project option. His ability to defend in multiple areas of the court, block shots, and create a shot for himself are honestly some of the most impressive in the class at his size. He's still raw and had more lumps than the conversation on draft Twitter would suggest, however he does have the makings of a great modern forward. I've been trying to find ways to rank Corey Kispert just a little bit higher, but I just can't. The problem with him is if I'm a team in need of shooting or in need of someone I know is going to be able to contribute quickly and match the timeline of my current roster, Kispert is absolutely at the top of my list. But he is what he is already. And that can lead you into a bunch of draft philosophy questions that we won't get into, but Kispert's ability to shoot, cut and move without the ball, and be a solid defender make him a guy I wouldn't be surprised going in the top 15 on draft night. There's no doubting Isaiah Jackson's upside. He's absolutely in the conversation for best athlete in the class, and his ability to block shots is up there with anyone's as well. While his flashes are pretty unbelievable and it's gotten him near lottery buzz, he's still very raw on both ends, though I think he does belong here. Jared Butler is a member of this year's Desmond Bane All-Stars. He makes the cut because even though he was the MOP of the Final Four, he didn't really get much of a bump from it. I'm super confident that he ends up being an instant impact player. He's a bit older, doesn't have the best measurables, but he's a good player and was great in college for a few years. Roko Prkačin is an extremely talented forward as one of the youngest guys in the class, steadily improving, but outside of a few people I rarely see him talked about. Now I think it's strange because I see international players who are less talented with even more buzz than he has. With that being said, Roko is somewhere in my top 20-ish area. He hasn't exactly followed up that 38-10 performance well, but I'm a fan of him as a prospect. Franz Wagner is interesting because I think his ceiling is elite complementary guy, but at his floor he's a solid fill-in-the-gaps rotational player. The lack of overall upside among a few other things that pop on film keep him outside the lottery. Josh Christopher is still a mid to late first round pick to me. There aren't too many guys in this class who offer his combination of athleticism, scoring ability, and all-around upside. If he falls to the early second like some mocks have had him listed lately, I'm definitely trying to facilitate a trade for him. There's a great case to be made for Sharife Cooper being even higher on my board. He's probably only a consistent floater and three-point shot away from being a starting guard in the league. He really has that much talent. But obviously those things aren't just going to magically appear as effective components of his game at the NBA level, especially not the shooting. But I really like the dynamic he brings to the floor. It's unique for this class, and though he'll always be behind the 8 ball defensively, I promise he's not as bad as his reputation would suggest. Jaden Springer is one of the prospects I'm probably the most uncertain about. He's got great physical tools, I love him defensively, and he's still super young, but I'm just not convinced of his game offensively as a scorer and even as a distributor as some others are. But he showed at IMG and with B-Mays are enough to keep him as a fringe lottery prospect because I think there's just something there that hasn't necessarily been unlocked yet. And now we'll look back at the large tier 5. Simply put, Davion Mitchell can play. The questions about his age and about the 3-point shooting being real or reliable are what keep him outside of the lottery for me, but I still like him in this area. I think at minimum he has a chance to be one of the better defenders at the guard spot in the league, and while he doesn't have the most polish as a passer among the aforementioned issues, he gets the job done and he's got a competitiveness I know I can count on. Alperen Sengun has put up some unprecedented numbers in the Turkish Super League. He's been a near automatic 20 and 10 who's a fluid mover and creative passer. There are some clear questions about his ability to stretch the floor and obviously defend, and given his play style, it's often tough to earn that type of role in the modern NBA, but I still see him as a real option in the late lottery and right outside. While I do like Josh Giddey, as you can tell by the ranking, I don't know if he's the guy that has started to creep into several top 5 conversations. He's an excellent passer with an advanced feel for the game, but his struggles as an individual scorer and a shooter are undeniable. And being that is so important to a supposed engine guard's game, I have my concerns. Guys like Kyle Anderson, Lonzo Ball, Draymond all serve as unorthodox creators for their teams, but all their biggest strengths come defensively, which Giddey isn't great at. He is one of the younger guys in this class, but it'll likely all be a process for him. James Bouknight is a talented scoring guard who is one of the sneakier great athletes in this year's pool of players. He's a bucket getter who routinely creates a ton of space and is a great mover without the ball. I think he's a bit better than advertised defensively, but the questions about him as a shooter, ball mover, and decision maker are definitely valid and will have a hand in deciding his future. Tre Mann is easily one of the most gifted shot creators in this class and someone who I'm locked in on as a lottery pick. It's so hard to consistently put pressure on your defender 30 feet away from the basket, and he did that. He's got a ways to go as a playmaker, and I'm counting on the defensive effort to pick up just by being in the league. But I think he's got something that few others have in this class, and if he goes in the late teens, I think somebody's getting a steal. It should be interesting to see Keon Johnson's measurables and how that affects his draft stock. If he is indeed closer to 6'3" than 6'5", I'll probably end up dropping him a few more notches because I think him being able to guard wings and then filling in most naturally as a slasher and wing scorer on offense are pretty important, especially considering his lack of feel or experience as a lead guy. I think tier 4 is where the potential high level guys really start at. That's not to say that there definitely aren't guys with super high upside ranked a bit lower, but in my opinion here there's a greater combination of ceiling and floor. If you're expecting Usman Garuba to come into the league and immediately put up consistent double-doubles or anything of that nature, you've got the wrong guy. But the energy and defensive excellence that he brings at the 4 or the 5, and the steady improvement offensively is something that you love. He's going to impact winning in some way, and he's already done so at 18-19 years old in the second best league in the world. The Masters have slotted Zaire closer to the end or the middle of the first round, but it's really tough for me to move him outside of my top 14. I think some people lack a bit of context of how this season went for him and that Stanford team. Everything from COVID to deaths in the family to a few injuries. Like I've said before, when he did get that short rhythm, he looked great and in more ways than just being a shot creator or perimeter scorer. You can make a legitimate argument that there is no prospect who had two-way sequences as impactful as Kai Jones. Now what does that mean without context? I mean, who knows? But the upside for Kai is ridiculous. In the right situation and with needed patience, Kai Jones can become another one of the league's coveted versatile bigs. He's a guy who literally just started playing organized basketball in the last 5 years. The sky is really the limit for him, and it's why he'll be in lottery conversations despite some of his shortcomings. I bought back into the upside that Jalen Johnson has. We've mapped out his weaknesses plenty of times, and definitely go check out his scouting report if you haven't already. but the guard skills and playmaking ability that he possesses at his size are excellent. If I'm in Jalen Johnson's corner, outside of working on the jumper, we're doing everything from focused plyos to yoga and tai chi to make him more flexible, well-balanced, and better equipped to play in the league. Conversation surrounding Jonathan Kuminga has also swung a bit too far in the wrong direction. But I definitely think he's top 10, and it would be hard for me to pass up a guy as talented as he is, even with some of the flaws that he has. He's still very young, and as little as 5 years ago, he was walking miles to get to a court in his home country of the Congo. The more I think about it, the more I'm comfortable on betting on Scottie Barnes, offensive flaws and all. The defensive prowess, energy, and physical attributes are so intriguing. We've talked about him being context dependent, and while that is mostly true, he's probably just a low 30s 3-point shot away from being a super important piece for pretty much any team. I really want to see him set screens and act as a decision maker on short rolls, because I think that he'll have to do a lot more of that in the league, just given how amazing these lead guards are on each team right now. We're probably not seeing that before the draft. I don't know if he'll do everything in the combine, but hopefully it's something he's focusing on going forward, and maybe we'll get to see it in the summer league. Moses Moody comes in at number 5. Now, I often take heat for this given the weight that people place on March Madness performances, maybe the lack of elite athleticism, or just because the big dogs don't have him ranked here, but I'm really confident in his ability on both ends of the floor, and while there isn't this giant separation between him and some of the players even ranked in the mid-teens, I like his game the most, and think his path to being a high-impact player is among one of the easiest. Here is a look back at Tier 3. I'm more confident in their star power than the Tier 4 guys. Now it is a bit funky, but Jalen Suggs is in a class of his own here. I don't give him his own tier because that sort of throws the video off and makes you think there's more space than there actually is. But for me, there's a gap between Jalen Suggs and the players I have ranked both behind and in front of him. He's a winner, he's unselfish, he plays hard, checks off most of the cliches, but I don't think he has quite the upside offensively as those left in front of him. Tier 2 is switched up just slightly with both Jalen Green and Evan Mobley included within the same tier. I still think Mobley's got a mentionable lead on Green, but to me, Green is enough better than Suggs to belong here. I just think the shot making ability, the athleticism, just add up to make a great prospect at that 2-guard spot. While there's a slim chance he goes number 1, number 2 is more than a possibility, but wherever he lands, I think that team will come away with a player who will make his mark in this league and probably always be the most objectively exciting guy to watch. Evan Mobley is at the number 2 spot. I feel like it's always good to revisit the top prospects as we work our way down the list, and I'm even more impressed with Mobley than before. He's got a chance to be the next great big in this league. The last time I really believed that was in 2018 with DeAndre Ayton. A guy with Mobley's combination of defensive versatility and ball skills at a legit 7 foot alone make for a prospect that most teams would love to have. Cade Cunningham remains his rightful place at the top of the draft. A two-way wing who can really pass it and create shots for himself off the dribble. I mean, you can nitpick his game, but the players who have ruled the league and probably will for the foreseeable future are the wings in the mold of a Cade Cunningham. He's aware of his weaknesses and seems to already be emphasizing making those improvements, which is a huge step for a young player.
And my biggest weakness, I'd say just 24/7 off the ball defense, just being locked in. Back doors and things like that. If I could be 24/7 locked in on that, then I feel like I'd be good. I feel like I'm close though. I'm not too far from there. And definitely, I feel like I could definitely limit turnovers from my handle, shoot the ball better, all those things. But I think just mental awareness, for the whole duration of the game, and then taking care of that ball, I'll be good.
I think he's going to be great and help out whoever ends up with that number 1 pick on lottery night.